The man accused of causing a huge scare, prompting a school to lock down, is in police custody this morning. He surrendered to authorities last night. APD says 28-year-old Andrew Godsey was taken into custody at Casement Hospital. His charges include disorderly conduct and unlawful carrying of a deadly weapon. Police say he was roaming the area around Eubank near Sandia Labs last week with an airsoft rifle and pistol, which both look real. That triggered a huge police response and several lockdowns. And it's not the first time fake guns have caused a scare in New Mexico or in other parts of the country. There's a national push to regulate the way fake guns look. But what do state lawmakers plan to do? We'll take a look into that in our next half hour.
Following up for you, a pair of suspects accused of ramming 3 deputy vehicles earlier this week is behind bars now. According to the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office, Veronica Lucero is the woman that a deputy tried to pull over Tuesday morning near Highway 14 and Frost. That's when deputies say Jason Smith rammed the patrol car from behind, sending it into a spin. Lucero was arrested after jumping out of the moving truck. The stolen vehicle then smashed into a telephone pole. 2 more deputies tried to chase Smith down near Juan Tabo and Lomas, but he got away after slamming into their cruisers. Now Smith is recovering in a hospital this morning after trying to run from deputies again. The sheriff's office says deputies saw him on I-40 yesterday heading towards Carnwell, and they say that he tried ramming their cruisers that time too. Smith later crashed into a ravine and was taken to the hospital.
We do know at this point that his vehicle was heavily damaged when it left the roadway. We do have some minor damage to vehicles involved in the pursuit. Fortunately, no deputies were injured today.
Deputies say Smith and Lucero have been working together to steal vehicles and U-Haul trailers.
The 7-Eleven gas station clerk who was shot in the chest over the weekend is now recovering at home. The clerk was shot early Sunday morning during an armed robbery at the convenience store on 12th and Lomas. In the meantime, police are still looking for the man who shot him. APD released this picture of a person of interest. If you know him, you are asked to call police.
News 13 has learned that Bernalillo County Manager Tom Zadanek is under investigation for allegedly making a female staffer uncomfortable. County Commissioner Wayne Johnson said Tuesday that Zadanek was being looked into, but nobody would explain why. Multiple sources now tell News 13 a female staffer filed a complaint against Zadanek, claiming he got a little too close and touched the 20-something-year-old woman's elbow. That's something that made her feel uncomfortable. Reached by phone, Zadanek would not comment other than to say the allegations against him were not sexual in nature. The staffer's attorney, Paul Kennedy, said he couldn't talk specifics yet, but he did say, quote, "We will be looking at this case from all angles with the aim of protecting her." Commissioners are set to meet next week to discuss that issue.
The Rio Rancho City Council calls out fellow councilor Chuck Wilkins. In fact, at last night's meeting, they voted to censure him. He's under fire and being denounced for using his position to benefit himself. Wilkins bought a plot of land near Southern and Unser earlier this year, then formed a committee to promote development there. Last night, councilors reprimanded him for violating the rules and compromising the integrity of the council. Time now 6:03. Money is coming into the hands of legislators, and they want to hear from you on how to spend it.
Yeah, lawmakers representing Rio Rancho are holding a public meeting tonight to see which projects you want to see get extra money. News 13's Catherine Mazzone is in Rio Rancho this morning with the details on that. Catherine.
Good morning, Adam. Now, this money comes from taxes on non-renewable resources like oil and gas. Every year, the money is divided among legislators, but they can only be used for certain projects.
For infrastructure for your community, or they've been used for senior centers, they've been used for police stations.
Senator Craig Brandt represents Rio Rancho. He says the money has been used in those areas he just mentioned, plus fire stations, water lines, and security at elementary schools. That took $600,000, and the district didn't spend a dime. Brandt says Rio Rancho legislators received more than $2 million last year. His portion, $1.3 million. But this year, he expects that pot to be a lot smaller, with his allocation closer to the $800,000 mark. Brandt says tonight's meeting is about being transparent and hearing what the people in his district want the money to go.
It's really not to build a consensus or even to get our name out there more. It's really so that we can hear from our constituents.
Now, Senator Brandt says he has a few ideas as to where that money will go, but the question is, will people be on board with his plan? We'll dig into that in our next half hour. Back to you, Adam.
All right, thank you, Catherine. By the way, that meeting is tonight at the Rio Rancho City Hall at 3200 Civic Center Circle from 5 to 8.
Albuquerque police and the feds are holding private meetings this week on reforming the department, and the meetings have been heated. The police union says most of the anger is coming from the police officers themselves, who are questioning the Department of Justice on its investigation, and White focused on certain excessive force cases. The city and feds recently signed an agreement to overhaul APD following a DOJ report that blasted the department's use of force. The police union says now that officers have had the chance to let the feds know how they feel, they are ready to move forward to make the department better. And family members of those killed by APD are demanding charges against the officers who killed their loved ones.
Indict, kill, or cross! Indict, kill, or cross!
Now, they delivered a big box of signatures to the U.S. attorney. They hauled the petition to Civic Plaza. One of the organizers says there are more than 47,000 signatures calling for charges.
So as a minimum, I'd like to at least, for a minimum, have a preliminary hearing to see if there should be an indictment. For God's sake, these men are getting away with murder.
That was Ken Ellis. His son was holding a gun to his head outside a 7-Eleven in 2010 when Officer Brent Lamperis Tremba shot him. Yesterday, the group met with U.S. Attorney Damon Martinez, but they now want to meet with the U.S. Attorney General to call for an investigation. News 13 called the feds for comment, but we did not hear back.
Happening today, CIA Director John Brennan is expected to speak at the spy agency's headquarters. This follows this week's release of a report detailing torture tactics used during interrogations after 9/11. The remarks also come after calls from some Senate Democrats asking for Brennan's resignation. United Nations leaders are reportedly considering charges against U.S. and CIA officials who authorized the tactics. The Justice Department says it's not going to prosecute former interrogators and their superiors. Also in just a few hours today, House leaders are expected to pass a bill that would keep the lights on for government workers at least until next year. This week, top lawmakers agreed on a funding bill of more than $1 trillion that would avoid another government shutdown. Federal agencies were going to run out of money by midnight tonight, but this bill, if it's passed, would include emergency funding to stop the spread of Ebola as well, and also funding to fight ISIS. There's some concern that House conservatives could block this, saying it doesn't go far enough to block the president's plan on immigration. Guess we'll see on that one, but the House is expected to vote on all of it coming up later this afternoon.
You know, we have a lot of federal workers here. Hopefully they can come to an agreement soon.
Get those lights back on, that's right.
New this morning, dramatic pictures taken overnight show a crash ending in smoke and flames that happened around 11 last night near Eubank and Knoll. The car you see in flames sparked immediately after crashing into another car. That's when police say the driver of the burning car ran off, but was later found and taken into custody. He's now facing DWI charges. As for the other driver, they had minor injuries and were treated on scene. Also overnight, police were looking for another driver who fled after crashing near I-40 in Rio Grande. Police aren't sure why the driver ran, but did tell us officers were talking with witnesses and a person of interest. We'll bring you more on this as it becomes available.
The man who police say caused a big scare near an elementary school and MCOR is in custody this morning. APD says 28-year-old Andrew Godsey surrendered to police at Caseman Hospital last night. His charges include disorderly conduct and unlawful carrying of a deadly weapon. Police say he was roaming the area around Eubank near Sandia Labs last week with an airsoft rifle and a pistol, which looked real. That triggered a huge police response and several lockdowns. You know, fake guns have caused some real scares in New Mexico and across the nation. In fact, some situations involving toy guns have ended in tragedy. Most recently, a 12-year-old boy shot by officers in Ohio. Now there's a national push to regulate the way the toys and pellet guns look and how they're sold. But what about here in New Mexico? 16-year-old Victor Villalpando from Espanola was shot and killed by police after pointing a real-looking cap gun at officers.
We've had some very unfortunate incidents across the country where that involved actually children, and we need to do everything humanly possible to make sure that folks know the danger of guns and how they should handle them.
Senator Michael Padilla expects the topic to be discussed during the upcoming legislative session, but he does not think that's going to go very far because New Mexico is a gun-friendly state. 12 other states have laws restricting the sale or appearance of imitation guns.
The APD officer accused of causing a UNM student to lose his testicle had his police certification pulled, all because of this.
Stop using your wrist support, don't kick me in the nuts. Oh, you on the ground. Don't kick me in the nuts.
The State Law Enforcement Academy Board revoked Pablo Padilla's law enforcement certification on Tuesday. APD says Padilla is assigned to administrative duty and his future as a cop is unclear at this time. This after UNM student Jeremy Martin filed the lawsuit saying that Padilla kneed him in the groin so hard he lost his testicle. Police said Martin would not follow Padilla's orders during the traffic stop in April.
The trial of a teenager accused of killing almost his entire family is still in limbo today. That's despite a hearing that determined that case must move forward.
I wanted to get this said. It just came to my attention literally in the last month and a half that this case existed and nothing happened to anything.
In January 2013, police say Nehemiah Griego, who was just 15 at the time, admitted to shooting his parents and 3 younger siblings in their South Valley home. At a district court hearing Wednesday, the judge and attorneys on both sides of the case agreed that they need to get things moving and they'll start setting deadlines in February. No trial date has been set. Griego has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, and he's now being held at the juvenile jail.
A school worker who went undercover for the FBI to expose what his boss was doing is now talking, but only to News 13. His boss founded well-known charter schools in Albuquerque and made a lot of money off of them. Mario Gugino says he discovered that millions of tax dollars supposed to go to students at Southwest Learning Center and Sam's Academy were going right back to the man in charge of the schools, founder Scott Glassrud.
It greatly concerned me because we deal with public monies.
Gugino said Glassrud's lifestyle seemed lavish even for Glassrud's $240,000 public salary. So he started digging deeper and says he found evidence of millions of dollars worth of embezzlement. He assisted the FBI in their investigation into the schools and said school administrators and the PED were not happy with it. Gugino filed a whistleblower lawsuit in district court saying administrators and the PED, which took control of the schools after the FBI raid, created a hostile work environment to push him out. A lawyer for the schools says he was never fired and that he's welcome back anytime. The PED would not answer our questions about that lawsuit. News 13 broke the story about Glassrud's questionable salary and the extra earnings he made by steering school contracts to companies he owns. If you head to KRQE.com, you'll find past stories on the school scandal, the lawsuit, and continuing coverage of the FBI investigation as it unfolded. New Mexico doesn't rank well when it comes to education, but the state is hoping to change that with more than $11 million in new initiatives. The package is aimed at supporting teachers and improving student success. Among the plan, the governor wants to boost the salary for new teachers by $2,000. If approved by the legislature, that would bring the starting pay to $34,000, and any teacher currently earning less would get a raise. The plan also calls for more than $2 million in funding to help teachers buy supplies through a debit card program and $2.5 million for a mentoring program that will pair high-performing teachers with those that need the extra help. Time now is 6:36. Police, schools, or maybe even roads. Legislators want to hear from you on how to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Every year they get tax money from non-renewable resources like oil and gas, and it's almost time to spend it. News 13's Catherine Mazzone is live in Rio Rancho with what they're considering this year. Catherine?
Good morning, Adam. Now, in previous years, the money's been spent on everything from fire departments to senior centers. Last year, it was used to upgrade security at elementary schools. Now, a senator from Rio Rancho wants to hear from residents.
Just asking the general public to come in and share with us some of their concerns.
Senator Craig Brandt represents Rio Rancho. Last year, Brandt received nearly $1.5 million to be spent on capital outlay projects. This year, he's expecting much less, but says he's still confident there's a lot of good that can be done with the money. He says he was at the first public meeting last week where residents weighed in on where they want this money to go. Brandt says there was no common theme among residents, but he says he did hear a lot about education reform. He says Rio Rancho Public Schools came in and talked about funding and the need for more from the state. While Brandt couldn't say whether any of the money would be used for school funding, he did tell us where some of the money would go.
There's some real issues in the oil areas of the state with their roads where we've had a huge increase in the deaths. And so some of those capital outlay dollars are going to have to be spent to fix that situation.
Now, Brandt says he expects to choose 3 or 4 projects he and other legislators can agree upon. If he has any money left over, he says that will be spent on a project he's passionate about. Back to you.
Catherine, thanks. Brandt says he wants to hear from you before making a final decision on where to spend that money. Tonight's public meeting will be held at the Rio Rancho City Hall from 5 to 8.
I absolutely love this story. 'Tis the season for giving, and that's why some Albuquerque kindergartners decorated a Christmas tree for the birds. Literally. Take a look. The tree outside Inez Elementary School in the Heights has ornaments made out of bird food and cereal. They were made by the students using the food and, of course, cookie cutters.
And then we got to hang it on a few days later. And we got to hang on the necklaces too.
What a cutie. The school is not just helping feed the birds. The kids are also holding a food drive to help families at the school that cannot afford a Christmas meal. I love that story.
Doing some good in the process.
Absolutely.